Hello and welcome to LSE Focus. It is pre-match build-up time for the final Premier League game of the season, and predictably, as Liverpool always somehow manage to do, they have taken things to the absolute wire. Now, obviously, with the result that Chelsea got against Huddersfield last night, things have suddenly become a little bit more optimistic for Liverpool fans, because while if Chelsea had beaten Huddersfield, this would have basically been billed as a must-win game. You know, we would have had to get 3 points to ensure that Chelsea had basically no chance of catching us, whereas now, with the point that Chelsea got last night, it is now simply a must not lose game. And, you know, if there's one thing that has burdened Liverpool this season, it's the fact that we are kind of not draw specialists, because that makes it sound like quite a good thing, but we do get a fair amount of draws, especially at Anfield in these kind of games. Not so much in the second half, but certainly in the first half of the season, and it's arguably the only thing that's really been stopping Liverpool from at least putting a little bit of pressure on and making a proper push at Manchester City this season. But yeah, we are pretty much unbeaten at home this season, if you discount that horrible game against West Brom in the FA Cup, in the league, and in all the competitions that matter, like the Champions League as well. We have been unbeaten at home, and it's highly unlikely that that record will come to an end against this Brighton side this weekend. So yeah, ultimately a game that Liverpool simply need to avoid defeating, but that's not to say that the squad should go into it with anything less than the absolute most focused mentality possible, because it's still a Premier League game. Brighton don't exactly have much to play for. They're safe, but they know that Liverpool will be after a result, so they know that they can set up and look to get some kind of result, maybe a draw or even a win, that would boost their fans and give them a little bit to cheer about going into this summer break. So yeah, Liverpool still need to be on it. They still need to get those kind of results, but I think we can all say that it's the kind of game that Liverpool should be getting over, and really a lot of people are seeing it as something of a hurdle to get over before the Champions League final, and that kind of brings things on to team news going into this game. Joe Gomez is out for the rest of the season. I mean, the last 2 games of the season and the World Cup as well. He suffered some form of injury while playing through the pain barrier in the last few Premier League games for Liverpool, so he is now completely out, which is disappointing, but as you'll find out later, I wasn't really expecting him to play in this game. Then Emre Can is apparently now losing his battle to be fit for the Champions League final. I mean, that's been toing and froing for a while. A lot of people seem to still be making the link to the contract situation. I mean, to be honest, none of us really know what's going on. Let's be honest, we haven't got a clue what's going on with Emre Can. It could be to do with his contract, could be to do with Juventus, could be to do with the fact that he's actually just hurt his back. Who really knows? But at the end of the day, he's not going to be available for this game, and probably not for the Champions League final as well. And elsewhere, Adam Lallana is back in training, so I think there's a possibility we could see him make a substitute appearance in this game. I mean, if we're going to see him in any capacity in the Champions League final in 2 weeks' time or so, then I think he absolutely has to play some sort of minutes in this game, because even if it's a sub in the European Cup final, you can't be throwing players into that kind of atmosphere, that kind of cauldron, having not played any Premier League and any competitive football at all since their injury. So I think if Liverpool do want Adam Lallana as an option in that final, then he absolutely has to get some sort of minutes. And I mean, I can't see him starting, but certainly, especially if Liverpool take a lead or something like that, and with it being the final day, it's not going to be the most intense game in the world. It's kind of an ideal atmosphere to be able to just bring him on and have a look at him and test and see where he actually is in terms of his recovery. So yeah, as for how we're actually going to line up, like I said earlier on, some people are suggesting that we rest a few players, we drop a few players, but I mean, in terms of fatigue, it shouldn't really be a problem. They've now had that big long week to rest, whereas we haven't had that for the last few games. The only real concern is injuries, and obviously we don't want players picking up any kind of knocks going into this that could potentially keep them out of the Champions League final. But I mean, you can't go off of that philosophy for every single game, otherwise you'd never play your best players unless it was the Champions League final. So I think Liverpool should be playing their best players, and also, you know, you want to keep them in a little bit of a rhythm. Obviously they have been tired because of the sheer amount of games they've had to play over the last month or so, but with that 2-week break coming up until the Champions League final, the last thing you want is for the players to fall out of rhythm and lose their match sharpness and everything. There's even been talk, I heard mentioned on the Anfield wrap, about a potential like behind closed doors friendly kind of match midway through that 2-week break, which I can absolutely understand Liverpool arranging because of that reason regarding sharpness. So I think we should be going for a full strength side in this game. I think Karius in goal, obviously. Van Dijk and Lovren in defence, again, obviously. I mean, potential shouts for Klavan, for Lovren maybe, because Lovren has a few injury troubles recently. But I think, yeah, you want to keep that back line. You want to keep them developing and understanding and getting into a real groove of how they play and how they work together as a unit. And on that kind of subject, I think we want Trent Alexander-Arnold at right back and Andrew Robertson at left back as well, keeping that core defensive unit in shape and in place for as many games as possible just to get them playing. Because, I mean, Trent Alexander-Arnold, he really struggled against Chelsea in that kind of midfield or wing back or right back role. He was being moved around all over the shop, and I think it's a good idea to help him get his confidence back by playing him at right back again. So I can absolutely see why Liverpool would do that. And Andy Robertson also had a poor game against Chelsea, so bring his confidence up as well with hopefully a good performance against Brighton. Midfield as well, keeping it strong. Henderson, Milner and Wijnaldum. I think they've been working really well recently, and part of it is due to the fact that they are Liverpool's only available midfielders now at this back end of the season. And I think that's kind of helped in a way in terms of bringing up a little bit of chemistry and a bit more of an understanding between them of what their roles are and where they all fit into the big jigsaw that is Jurgen Klopp's gegenpressing system. Obviously, it fell a little bit short against Chelsea. Part of that was due to fatigue. Part of that was due to the fact that Trent Alexander-Arnold was making this weird guest appearance. So I think we keep the main three, Henderson, Milner and Wijnaldum, and just keep them ticking over, keep them working. And again, on a similar subject, Salah, Firmino and Mane for the front three. I mean, shouts for Ings, shouts for Solanke. Obviously, when there's about half an hour left, absolutely, you want to start taking players off. Anyone who looks a bit leggy, anyone who looks like they're feeling their muscles a little bit, especially that front line, get them off and get them rested so that they are ready for that game at Kiev. But I think in terms of starting 11, you absolutely stick with those core players. And it's important to remember, as much as now with the Chelsea result against Huddersfield, everyone's basically presuming that we're in the top four. We aren't. We still need to get some sort of result in this game, and if things start going pear-shaped, you want those players on the pitch to be able to still get the job done for Liverpool. So Brighton then, I mean, they're not exactly doing amazing. Obviously, they've got that big result against Man United last weekend, so that could give them a little bit of momentum and a little bit of belief of, okay, we can get some big results here. Like I said, they'll want to give the fans something to send off with before the summer break, but they did also play against Man City in midweek, and that hardly went as well as the game did against Man United. And I just think the gulf in quality between them and Liverpool, which was exposed earlier on in the season at the Amex when we absolutely thrashed them 5-1, and I mean, even their goal was one of the softest penalties we've ever seen given against anyone, let alone Liverpool. But yeah, I mean, they've got Ulloa, so if someone's going to be a pest, it's going to be him. We saw that Salomon Rondon caused us problems in the West Brom game when we weren't quite switched on, when we weren't quite committed to the game. He exploited that, and I think Ulloa is that kind of big physical striker who could go for the same kind of thing. But I just still think Liverpool absolutely should be at least drawing this game. I mean, come on, the idea of us losing is so out there, and I could be eating my words at the end, but this is a game that Liverpool should absolutely get the business done in. I think we're going to get a win and the 3 points that will seal Champions League qualification as well, and here are my 3 reasons why I think we will. So first of all, as I said, they played against Man City in midweek, and Liverpool actually didn't have a midweek game this time around. It feels like a very rare situation to be in, where we're not actually the team that's expected to be knackered. We're the team that's had a proper amount of rest and also a proper amount of time to prepare for our opponent as well. You know, I think an issue that Liverpool had against Chelsea was the fact that they only had recovery time. There was presumably barely any time on the training pitch for them to actually get the hours in and work out what Chelsea's plan was going to be and how to counteract that. Whereas Jurgen Klopp has now had plenty of time to work with the squad on getting them back up to full match sharpness, getting them into the kind of condition where he'll be happy to put them out for a Premier League match that we need points in, and he will also know how to break Brighton down and will have drilled that into the side. So I think that's hugely important for Liverpool. Hopefully Brighton will be fatigued from basically chasing shadows for 90 minutes against Man City, as is always the case when you end up playing against a side that good. Man City could potentially prove to be very good preparation for Liverpool as well, so that's something that you kind of got to take into account. They might have some idea of how they want to play, but I also think that the fact we've had that rest means that if things do start going pear-shaped, you know, if we concede first like we did against Chelsea, the lack of fatigue means that the players will still have the energy to step up, whereas as soon as we went 1-0 down against Chelsea, the players' heads just dropped because they knew they didn't have enough in the tank, really, to actually break down Chelsea without a lot of luck being on their side, which, as we all know, there wasn't any luck on our side. But yeah, I feel like if we went 1-0 down against Brighton in this game and had like an hour to pull things back or anything like that, I'd back those players like Salah and Mane, Firmino, and the midfield as well, and everyone on the pitch to really take the game by the scruff of the neck this time and drag Liverpool back out of the mire. And on the subject of players who can grab games by the scruff of the neck, I'm expecting Mo Salah to put in some form of big performance for Liverpool for this game, because I mean he hasn't scored in his last 3 or something like that, and most of the times this season, the last time Mo Salah went on a bit of a drought like that was when he didn't score in 2, and after that he scored 4 against Watford. So I'm kind of backing Mo Salah to just come out and score like 5 goals in this game, because he's been building up to it for a while, and obviously like the rest of the squad, he looked absolutely knackered against Chelsea, and he looked pretty knackered in the Roma game as well. I think the schedule has started to take its toll on him, especially with the burden that's placed on him and the amount of man marking that goes into teams trying to stop Mo Salah as well. So I think having that extra bit of rest, both mentally and physically, means that he will absolutely be fired up and ready to take on teams once again. And I mean, obviously, the Golden Boot race is kind of coming down to the final day. If you want to suggest that Harry Kane's going to score like three or 4 goals or something like that. So he will still want to do that, and he'll still want to break that record as well and get his 32nd goal of the season. So I mean, I'm backing Mo Salah to be absolutely bang up for this game and hopefully score a hatful of goals. And finally, I talked about the gulfing class between these two teams, and it is no clearer than in the midfield. Now, midfield has been a problem position for Liverpool for most of this season. Certainly the first half, when we were doing all the rotation, we could never really work out what the best system was. We never really worked out what the best players for certain systems were, and that was causing Liverpool problems. Whereas now, like I said, we've had to settle on this midfield because they are our only fit players, and they have looked really, really good over the last few games. And I think one of the problems we had against Chelsea was not just the fatigue, but the fact that, like I said, with Alexander-Arnold coming in, we sort of threw ourselves off a little bit, and it meant that Chelsea absolutely dominated the midfield. And part of that was down to the players they had at their disposal as well. You know, Fabregas, Bakayoko, not being great this season, but did have a decent game against us. And of course, the absolutely fantastic N'Golo Kante. And no disrespect to Brighton, but I mean, I look at their midfield and I don't really know any of them, and they play a 4-3-3, so it's effectively going to be 3 versus 3 in the middle of the park, and I just absolutely back Liverpool's players to completely control the game from there, and then that should hopefully free up the front 3 to just add the magic touches at the end, get the goals, and seal what should really be a comfortable win for Liverpool. So that is all for today's video. Thank you guys very, very much for watching. I'll be back tomorrow with the FIFA 18 prediction show for this game, so do stay tuned for then. Until then, thank you very much for watching. Don't forget to like this video if you enjoyed it. Hit that subscribe button there if you're new around here. Check out some of the other videos that have been out on the channel over the past few days as well. Don't forget to follow at LFC Focus TV on Twitter, and I'll be back tomorrow for that FIFA prediction show. Bye for now.